came back? Come on. What'd you think of the first one? I know you should leave some comments, man. Give me that feedback. Makes me feel good, right? Thanks for hopping on video 2, right? Where we're going to look at how I would start an MSP in 2024 and give you some of the logic, right? Give you some of the ideas that came behind and give you some of the research in why I chose these things. Why did I keep it simple? And if you are joining me on this wild ride, you probably are curious as well. So with that being said, let's roll the intro and get right into all of the good, juicy details. Roll the intro. All right, guys. So how would I go about starting this? Well, let's be real, right? I'm going to start with the basics. I'm going to pick an MSP name. Let's call it Spaceballs the MSP. And we're going to register that domain. We're going to create the 365 account so we can start using email and have all new registrations under one account. I'm going to file for our electronic tax ID number, EIN, so that the IRS recognizes me as a real business. I need to keep in mind that about $750 for new businesses. And I'm gonna get a $0 annual fee credit card and sign up for QuickBooks Online and connect the checking account and credit card. So this is important. QuickBooks is gonna be probably the first tool that I sign up for, even though it is a little pricey. So main reason why is I wanna make it to be extremely easy to go ahead and categorize all the purchases that I make in my business. Now also, because I want to keep things easy, is I'm going to sign up for a contractor only account at the company Gusto. Gusto is a payroll software ultimately that allows you to do some benefits and some HR stuff. And I'm going to be hiring in this year. And I just want to get it set up. It costs $0 for contractor only. And I can do a lot of these things I'm talking about while I'm at my current employer. Now, to keep costs down, I'm going to sign up for AWS and spin up a WordPress server for my eventual website. And I'm going to use a service like Fiverr.com and have them create my site for around $250. And if you don't know what to put on it, right, go find 5 MSPs in your geographic area and have them use that as your reference. It's going to change down the road. You just want to check it off your list. If someone goes to your website, that they see you're a real business, right? You don't want to be able to put a place with a form to fill out tickets or to inquire about business. So just keep it simple. And if you don't know 5 MSPs in your area, let me show you how simple this is. What I want you to do is open a web browser and just go to maps.google.com. And then what I want you to do is simply put in IT services and the area that you're using. So IT services San Diego. What you will find out quickly is Google's a good place to find your competition. So what I can then do is take this list, get the websites, learn a little bit about them since I want to start my own business, and give that to the Fiverr person to go ahead and build a website off of. Now, this covers the basics, right? We have a website, we have an email address, and I'm now able to categorize all of our fees and invoices, and I've really only spent about $1,000 of our budget. We want to establish some mile markers of our success. And we need to keep in mind that in the early days of our MSP, we will have very little to spend and no one to delegate to. Time is our biggest asset. But also it's our largest bottleneck in this process because eventually that's going to bite us in the butt. So there are 2 constraints we established for ourselves from the bad idea board, right? What were those constraints? 50% gross margin, tier 1 was offshore. I don't know if you saw that. Competitive advantage being our price, right? We're new on the market. I don't got much cost. And time and materials is not worth our time. So I really have to go after new contracts. So I'm gonna go to a popular job board in the Philippines. And I got an affiliate code, by the way, if you don't mind using it in the comments. And we're gonna look for someone just to set a price, right? A bar to where we can understand what we would have to spend. So, right, if I go to look for talent, let's just put IT specialist. Let's be generic, right? Who knows what we'll find. And as you can see, if we run through here, we've got a lot of people in that 3, 5, 7, 7, 5, right? You're seeing a common theme about $5 an hour. So if we think about that, right, that's roughly going to be anywhere between $500 and $750 a range per month. We know they won't be experts and we'll need to interview a few of them, but let's just put this on the high end. This tells us that our gross margin, right, we want to keep it 50%, will need to be anywhere between $1,500 and $2,000 in MRR to bring on a help desk resource. And this is great to know because now we have a revenue target in our early days to begin scale. Now, there are two other bottlenecks in our time that we can identify on this list. On-site work and projects will still be our responsibility. Projects, right, we can do those after hours and we put that in the business plan, but it will burn us out if we do too many. So we need to minimize clients or standards that will enforce really large projects. And luckily, as our other constraint is on here, those both come with additional revenue. So if I do have to take them, it's merely just gonna be cash on the bottom. But the other thing that's gonna be a huge time suck for me is going to be tier 2 escalations. When that help desk person can't figure out the issue, they're gonna escalate it to me. And this doesn't come with revenue. So using a process, something like asynchronous communication, I will need to do these two things. The first is I need to invest in a tool to document how I fix things for that individual I bring on board to review, right? And I want to keep as close of a one-to-one knowledge base to escalation ratio as I can. Tools that are really good for this are something like Microsoft Stream. They now have it built in, or Loom, L-O-O-M. Fantastic tool that actually allows you to record your screen and your webcam so you can talk through why you're doing what. Then I would send that to the tier 1 person to review and create a knowledge-based article so that they can review it in the future. And I only have 1, 2, 3 clients. This isn't a huge deal. We both are gonna have plenty of time. May as well start on day 1. But this won't fix the issue long-term, so we'll need to build into our plan when we hire either a field/tier 2 hybrid individual, or do we offshore a tier 2 person? The first option, right, if I look at going to get someone in my backyard, let's go get someone in San Diego. Now, according to Glassdoor, in San Diego, it's gonna cost me somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000. So after taxes, that's roughly gonna be about $6,250 a month if I found someone for $60,000, right? Just cut it down the middle. So if I use that 50% gross margin, that's gonna put me between $13,000 to $15,000 in MRR we would have to generate to afford this person, right? That's just how much business I need to do. Now, on the other front, if we offshore this person, it's looking to be a little bit more than double. So let's go back to our job board and let's just do IT specialist. Let's just do IT engineer. Let's change it to something that has a little more weight. So if I look for IT engineer, right now I'm seeing people in the $9, $25, $10. So if I look at 10 roughly, right, that's about $1,500 a month. So if I go between, let's just put it conservative, let's add a little extra, $1,750 and $2,500 a month for offshoring an escalation resource at 50% gross margin, that's about $5,000 to $6,000 in monthly recurring revenue that I would have to afford this individual. So this is all to say we need to choose our destiny on this one and then build a sales plan to find that MRR, right? We have 6 months, so clock is ticking. So that tier 2 person's probably not going to be in the first 6 months. And we don't need to make this decision yet. We know the cost and we can map this out later, and we're going to get back to this. So next, we are going to need clients to take that first step. If I were starting an MSP in 2024, I'm going to target one particular ideal client profile. Now, over the last few years, and I've said this before, I have noticed MSPs pounding their chest in retaliation to one particular group, small businesses with less than 10 users. I mean, just go search Reddit, Facebook, Slack. These statements are everywhere of MSPs that just don't want to work with these companies. The other is this hard and fast rule of charging these ambiguous price per user rates beyond $150 a user. I mean, look at all these comments that I had found by doing a simple Google search of every comment on Reddit about pricing. They're just all over the place of a hard and fast rule. So I need to target my MSP to be cheaper and available to small businesses if I want the highest chance of bringing them on board quickly. And this is great, by the way, because the most recent census identified more than 90,000 businesses in San Diego. I just did a Google search, small businesses in my area, and multiple blogs. We found the federal census. I was able to find some spreadsheets even to show me this data. And a lot of those actually reported that beyond small business, because that could be 15, 20, 50 different users in a business, that many reports showed as high as 70% had less than 10 employees. So the beautiful thing about this is if there's 90,000 businesses, let's round up, say 100,000, and 70% have less than 10 employees, that means I have a potential of 70,000 businesses that I can target. So we have established our ICP, right? That ideal client profile. Again, I now need to keep in mind that I have to do MRR because I've put the constraints of no T&M on my business. Then I need to figure out how many units I need to sell based off this strategy. And to do that, we need to take the client's pro forma and work backwards. Basically, how much can the client spend? Then how far can I beat that pricing? In the United States, IT spending ratios as a percentage of revenue. So in my head, I have to then compete with what they would spend in a normal business transaction, right? A large MSP or internal IT. Being that we do not have a vertical, we're just doing a geographic area, we need to make an assumption that using this data, that most businesses in San Diego, in small business that spend 2.5% to 5% on IT, are spending $6,000 to $12,000 per user annually, or roughly $500 to $1,000 a user for all IT expenses, right? That's the computer, that's their software, it's all kind of baked into there. Bing! Did your light bulb just go off as well? So if I know they're spending $500 to $1,000, and I know most MSPs are charging $150 plus a user, then now I have my boundaries. If our client will have no more than 10 users, then we can almost guess that at $150 a user, most MSPs are going to come in around $1,000 a month. But we cannot charge that because we're new, right? We're young. We don't have case studies or referrals. So I got to come in under that to one, beat them if I ever do come up with them in competition, and two, blow them away at how much money they will save as business owners. So we need to get our first clients under our feet so that we can pay rent in 6 months. So we'll mess with this later, but let's say just $500 per client per month, as we just want to make a splash and survive. So for those of you keeping score at home, we now have the goal of our business, right? Survive within 6 months. We have our first hire plan, but do we? Right? We talked about that. We have our target market, right? San Diego small businesses. We have our ideal client profile, right? Small businesses with less than 10 users. And we have our price and packaging. $500 per client per month. The only thing left we need to do is get our PSA ready and be ready to hit the streets. So I wouldn't overthink when it comes to PSA, right? Your ticketing system, your AV software, and RMM, right? Just there's no need to, because you'll have to start spending money before you have customers, and we don't want to do that. I'd have just enough ready with monthly contracts so that we can track tickets and time on tickets. Maybe billing, but I wouldn't overthink it. Now, you may be thinking, Kyle, what about agreement structure, sales deck, MSAs, stack, procurement? Short answer, until you have a business or know that you enjoy running a business, I'm not going to waste my time on these things. But going back to the PSA, I'm going to use something like Halo PSA that I can simply pay monthly and start up without having to talk it to a sales rep, right? You can go to their website right now and sign up. At minimum, I need the ability to make tickets from email anyway. So second priority, if I have time and I'm feeling a little eager, I'm going to set up agreement billing and make sure that my quoting system, which luckily Halo can help you with, and QuickBooks to handle the actual payment, get that money into your account, it can go ahead and help facilitate that. If a client has something already, I'm just going to let them keep using what they got and set it up correctly. And if they don't, then, I don't have any established distribution or procurement in year one. I'm just gonna have my client get something simple like Sophos that I can just go on the website, put in a credit card number and get the licenses and just make them each their own account. And once that comes up and I get about 10 clients under my belt, I'm gonna then call someone like Pax8 to set up a distribution agreement to where I can resell antivirus software to save myself a few pennies. I'm not gonna save a whole ton of money, but at least then I can start to automate that process and not worry about renewals after a year. So now we have our tool and we need to create the sales plan of what we will push ourselves to achieve to keep this going. And I think it's time we build a sales plan to meet this objective so we don't sink in the first 6 months. So get your pencils ready, time to write a sales plan. And let's look at this step by step. All right, we've all agreed that we're gonna charge $500 a client a month and not hire our first employee until we have more than $2,000 a month in MRR. So by that, we're looking at needing a total of 5 clients, right? 5 times 500 is $2,500 to get that mark. The easiest way to map this out is simply put, get 1 customer a month at this $500 price point every single month. Now, this may seem like a lot, and we're gonna break down the effort that this actually takes in the next video, how I would approach business development. So let's assume 1 client per month and 2 price increases gets us to $750 and $1,000. So if you want to see what this looks like, right? Here's our pricing tier. We got 3 phases, 1, 2, 3. And you know what? Just for shits and grins, say that we allow more than 10 users, and we can see that we are at least keeping control of increasing our price per user. So when we have a team that's large enough and we want to converge to an actual per use basis, we can do that at a competitive price. Now, going back to this spans the entire year. Now, I'm also okay with this aggressiveness because I'm going to also ask those first 5 clients all the time for referrals, for reviews, for case studies, be a point of contact on a recommendation. And also with another constraint, this would mean my first 2 clients would also get a 10% increase in November and December. So, right, we've got that model just here. So now we can see from this, and if we look at this, it's going to allow us to hit $100,000 in ARR in the first year. And this is a pure managed services revenue. And I think we could do way better. And just to show you, stepping up the aggression. So let's show what happens if I change this to 750. So if I go here and adjust that first tier to 750, that second tier to 1,000, and this last tier to 1,250, now look at what that did to our numbers. Now we're going to be finishing the year with over 10,000 in MRR and 133,000 in ARR. So depending on how aggressive I'm thinking and how good and confident I am about my ability to close clients, I can adjust my price rather than my units. Now, if we add in our costs, right? Let's think of all that money we spent getting the business going, that first step, to make sure that we don't, right, catch ourselves in a bind. So if I take all of these costs and I look at things like the LLC fee we talked about, the website development, the hosting of this stuff, maybe some miscellaneous fees. Like I went out and got business cards and a uniform and flyers and some pens with my name on it for leave behinds. Let's just say I spent $500. Now, Microsoft 365 Business Premium, I'm gonna have to have that. That's $22 a month a user. QuickBooks Essentials Online, they have a 3-month half off thing, so I threw that in here. That's about $60 a month though, long term. We have Gusto, which is free until we bring our first contractor on. We have our PSA, a little pricier at $119 a user a month. RMM and AV, I just put some guesstimates in here that I think are a little high, but right, we want to stay conservative. $50 a client per month. And then we also have AV, I put at $20 a client per month. So if you see how this goes from January through March, now we have these things ticking up with the number of units that the customers are coming on. So I go from 1 client to 2 client to 3 client. This is allowing me to see the total cost of my business and an approximate net operating income that my business is going to have. Now this gets us into the conversation of cash flow, because in the first month, because I had all of those pre-existing costs, and as time goes on, right, keeping my eye on the ball of my business so that I can bring on, right, as we discussed, that first guy, that first tier 2 engineer at roughly $750 a month. And there's no taxes because, right, they're offshore. And we've already signed up for Gusto, so it'll be very easy to bring them into our system, start getting them paid so that they can start working. But what I've also done is made sure to increase the other items like your PSA that will also have costs when you bring on another user. Those other costs. So now we're in a spot where we can see that January will be tough, and at $500, we will flirt with less than $10,000 cash on hand. Because I wanted to go ahead and add in all of those costs that we incurred, right? I wanted to put in, we started with $25,000 in our pocket. We have our living expenses in here because we want to make sure that we're also paying our rent and not causing too much burn. So through all of this, we are now able to see that rolling cash. Now, I've also put taxes in here so I make sure I don't get ourselves burned. Now, what we can see is that January is going to be tough, and at $500, right, we're going to start flirting with some low cash on hand amounts because we are making investments, right? We are spending some of our cash, and our revenue doesn't quite frankly bring in enough. But also, one thing I want to keep in mind that's not in here with taxes is that as an LLC, you'd be able to start moving some of your living expenses into the business. Things like your cell phone, part of your rent and home office, your home internet, some power bills. So it's going to affect things by a few percentage points, not enough at this scale to really model out, and everyone's tax bracket's a lot differently. But right, this isn't great. For a year one MSP with 50% gross margin and net margin with 100,000 in ARR, staying cash flow positive is great. Now, one thing that we haven't discussed, and I've already put it in this spreadsheet and probably caught your eye, is when we talked about bringing in that tier 2 individual for escalations, right? We talked about bringing someone in locally at $62.50 a month in cost. It's just not going to be within our reach in the first year at one client per month. So if we want to at least eliminate help desk escalations for me as the owner, so I can have firepower, we can do this around October, and this is going to set us up for success in 2025. If we are feeling cash drained, we can hold off until next year. We don't need to bring this tier 2 person in, and we can roughly bring in $2,000 a month into our pockets, which really change these numbers on the bottom. Right now we're making money as an owner. We decide to bring in a tier 1 person instead. Now we will definitely need it, as if we look at our available help desk hours per month, and as the owner steps more and more out of help desk, April and October come very close to maximum capacity. So I've modeled that actually. So moving to this calculator up here, what we can see is that as an owner, roughly if I spend 3 hours a day on help desk, remember, you only have 1 or 2 clients, you're not going to be spending a lot. 3 hours a day, that roughly gives you about 61.25 hours per month. And if I bring tier 1 on, right, that's about 147 if they're fully in it 8 hours a day, which is a lot more than what we have available. So eventually I can drop my hours to 2 hours a day as an owner to use that for business development. Now, it's not going to be a perfect one-to-one, right? We know this because I'm going to have to train them the first month. Second month, it's going to taper and taper and taper. So in that though, I'm also adding clients every single month, and we need to keep this in mind. So what I've done is built a chart here to outline that at approximately 1.5 hours per user per month, and always assuming that there's 10, and I even put some of those 12 and 15 here for safe management, is that I'm going to have a deficit around April, because I'm going to start stepping back as an owner from the help desk, and as well as October. So what's beautiful about this is this aligns with our MRR, right? We said at May, I have $2,500 in ARR to bring on a person. From a operations perspective, it's actually supported as well that, hey, in May, you better bring someone else on board to help, because now you have more clients than you can sustain as an owner and only put in 3 hours of help desk a day. And the same thing in October, right? I need to bring on that next resource to increase the amount of help desks that I can operate on or provide to my customers, because at that point, I'm bringing on 9, 10, 11, 12 customers. More than likely, 1.5 hours per user a month at a 10 user client office is going to be a little too much, but I want to be conservative as I write this. So keep this in mind that you will have to monitor this. So from a high level, what's beautiful about all of this is we've taken that $500 client profile product, and we have shown how many clients it would take for us to bring on board to start bringing on resources to support me as the owner, so that I could slowly start to step back from the help desk. So with the business plan written, right, we've built out this model, we have our goalposts, right? We know our quota essentially, and we know what we can spend. Right now it's time to figure out how we're going to do this. And I want you guys to join me next time as we wrap up this 3-part episode and discuss how I would structure my schedule to accommodate all of this work. And it's going to be a wild ride the first year. And no one has ever started a business and said it's easy. So I appreciate you staying with me in these last 2 episodes. Make sure to subscribe, right? Leave me a comment. It makes me feel good about doing these. And as always, stay accountable.